нехай славний дух України світить і живе вічно.
The people of Ukraine, the way they are right now, the way I saw them, these are the real heroes.
Before the trip, we knew heroes only from the books and movies and songs. And now we know heroes personally, and they are asking for our help. My name is Igor Yasno.
And I'm Elena Yasno. I'm his wife.
We both were born in Kiev in 1960s, early 1960s, and we came to America in 1977.
We've lived most of our lives in the United States, most of it in Los Angeles and Southern California. We have a very deep connection to Ukraine. We still feel very much Ukrainian. We don't speak Ukrainian very well, but we do speak Russian, and when we communicate half English, half Russian. And Ukraine has a special place in our hearts.
When the war started, we decided to help. And the best thing we could come up with was to collect money from our friends and family and send the money to the volunteers in Ukraine who would use it to buy supplies, drones, vehicles, and other things that could in fact help the army to fight off the Russians. But then when the time came, after a year of the war, an idea came up that maybe we could actually go there ourselves and see the volunteers that we've been working with and see how they do their work and meet the people who benefit from our help. And, you know, it's always better to see things with your own eyes rather than hear about it or read about it in a paper. We all live in our own lives, and we all worry about our own little piece of pie that we're trying to carve out. But it is so unusual when you have an opportunity to be a part of something much bigger than this day-to-day hustle and bustle. And we've always been very, very active in the community, and our love and our loyalty to Ukrainian people gave us this chance to become a part of something more important than our own day-to-day activities.
So we went in May. May is a beautiful time of the year to go. Everything is blooming, lilac, lily of the valley, chestnut trees. This is the symbol of Kiev. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful time of the year to go, and I wanted to go in May. But May is also a very important month of all the holidays. The 1st of May is the Labor Day, and the 9th of May is the Victory Day, and it's a big deal. So when we started to plan the trip, everything was going great and everything was fine, but then people from Kiev started telling us, don't come around the 9th of May. That's the worst time because that's when the missile attack will increase. Well, everything was planned, plan A and B out the window, so Igor and Elena getting together and going, no matter what. And so we were in Kiev actually from 7th of May until the 17th.
We realized from the get-go that this is not going to be our regular trip. It wasn't going to be a vacation. We will be working. And in order to make our time in Ukraine as productive as possible, we needed a local handler, someone who would help us with finding the people to talk to, organizing meetings for us, arranging different visits, and so on and so forth. We were very lucky to meet on the internet, mind you, a volunteer who is a very, very prolific person, a young woman who is a former member of Ukrainian parliament and now is the head of this volunteer organization. Her name is Elena. She is the one whom we met on the internet, on WhatsApp, and we stayed in touch with her. We told her about our goals, we told her about who we are, and she immediately went into action. And she told us about, we put together a calendar, and we were going to spend initially a week in Kiev. Then that week became 10 days, and eventually we stayed there for 14 days. There was so much to do and so many people to see, and we just could not leave earlier. And we could have stayed more if we wanted to, really, but it was time to go.
She didn't want us to go.
Olena organized our day in such a way that we would always meet different people and get exposed to different projects. And everyone has their own specialty, it seems. We met one group that buys and installs temporary housing for people. We met a doctor who operates on soldiers and civilians and basically is known as a miracle worker who saves limbs, because those people are about to lose their legs and arms, and he saves them for them. We met people who deliver medication to the remote villages where normal doctors do not travel to, and we drove an ambulance to get there. We met people who buy drones and vehicles, and we rode with them as well and saw how that works. So every day was full of some kind of activity that was geared toward a specific project.
And we actually visited a lot of these destinations. We visited a playground that is being constructed by volunteers, people out of their own collections that they collected donations. They're actually building a brand new playground next to the playground that still has slides for the children, and the slides have holes from the shrapnel. And the kids are sliding down those slides. It's painful to watch. There are lots of different projects that we actually saw and visited, and it really inspired us to do more.
One of the first people we met was a young woman. Her name is Liz. She wasn't born in Ukraine. She is Russian by birth, and she lived all her life in one of the Baltic republics. And before the war, she was one of the high-flying influencers. And then when the war started, she left her job and became a volunteer for an organization that we partner with. It's called Ukraine Aid International. So we met Liz on the second day of our being there. We interviewed Liz at length, and she told us about her story. She speaks perfect English. She graduated from an American high school and university. And after we finished the interview, they took off and started driving.
Originally, my reasoning behind going was to get my grandma out. As mentioned, I'm a fourth Ukrainian, and my grandma lives in Lviv. But if I'm going to be honest with you, that was kind of an excuse. I think from the moment I saw what was going on the TV, February 24th, when I woke up, I was just literally glued. I was a bit like a maniac. My boyfriend is in IT, so we have a lot of screens, and I set up live feeds of like Kiev, of Chernobyl. I didn't even know what Chernobyl is, and I was watching live feeds of all these different Ukrainian cities, just staring at the screen, waiting for something. What? I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but I just felt so like drawn. I was like, this is crazy. This is, you know? So I got into texting, and people started asking for all kinds of different stuff, you know, from helmets to night vision goggles to food to like sanitary pads for women, you know. It ranged through so much stuff. And Richard and I, we started just reaching into our network, and we realized it kind of worked. You know what I mean? We knew enough people between the two of us, me from my like Instagram influencer career, him from being a lawyer and an ED. It kind of worked out where we constantly just had groups of people that were willing to fund us. Well, first fund the aid. We were doing everything out of our own pocket. I burned through my savings, I believe, around end of April completely. And I think the first thing that really that I think made that shift and made that also click in my mind of what I'm doing out here is I got the first medical shipment, and it was medicine that was maybe worth around 50 grand, which to me today looks like a small value, but to me then, that was crazy. I mean, for someone to give me, like, and it was stuff like propofol, it was tranexaur, you know, it was like blood stoppers, it was all very high grade level medication. I started Googling the vials, and some of them were like $200 each. And the person who handed it to me said, make sure it gets to where it has to go. And I was only in Lviv until that time, and I was like, well, you mean the front? And he was like, yes, I want this to go to the front. And I was like, okay. 3 weeks and about 6 housings I moved with these boxes. I drove the team crazy. I refused to let them out of my sight. I literally slept with the boxes around my bed. So I made like a fortress of all of these drugs basically. And because we kept moving houses, we had to keep moving the boxes. And I just couldn't find anyone to take it to the east. Because I was like, well, how can you guarantee anything, right? Like no one knows anything. So after 3 weeks, I was like, you know what, guys? I'm over it. I'm getting in the car and I'm going to Kharkiv. And that was right when Russians were pushing in. So all of Kharkiv was completely evacuated. I think it was the beginning of April. And everyone told me that I'm crazy, that I shouldn't do it. And I said, okay, then you guys stay and I'll see you in a week. But as soon as I got into the car, the whole team followed. So the whole convoy got in behind me and we went to Kharkiv for the first time. And that was April.
We've met amazing people during this trip. And one of the people that became my hero, or yeah, I would say a hero, is a woman who is, she's an obstetrician gynecologist. The doctor's name is Natalia Leluch, and everybody calls her Dr. Natasha. We went with her, we brought the donations, we went with her to buy the medications. Then we loaded it up into the ambulance. And she took us in her ambulance to the small remote villages where we distributed the meds. And she also examined everybody, and she talked to every little old woman or old man, whoever's there, or little children. And she goes in full armor with the a bulletproof vest and everything. The amount of heart this woman has, and it's just amazing.
Я вас вітаю в нашій компанії Work and Travel.
I welcome you to our company, Work and Travel. I'm joking. We are starting our trip today to a village called Zahaltsi,
Вона знаходиться за Бородянкою.
located beyond the village of Borodyanka.
Бойових дій, які були на Київщині.
This village was very much affected by the military attacks that were happening near Kiev.
Ліки по замовленню, які люди вже
Today, we will be providing medical help, distributing medication that people had previously requested, and I think we will witness the consequences of what happens when one country decides to attack another.
One thing she told me that really resonated or stayed in my mind is that she was one of the first people in Bucha after Bucha happened, and all the atrocities and the mass graves and everything.
І для мене вот эти первые 2 недели были
During the first 2 weeks of the war, I thoroughly understood that this could be the end of my life.
возле Гостомеля.
I lived near the town of Gostomel, and there were constant battles in my backyard.
Бои все у меня во дворе.
And I was understanding that life can end very quickly.
Вот жизнь очень быстро закончится.
And this was such a surprising gift, honestly, when you really start to understand what is important and what isn't.
Я думаю, что, наверное, что-то подобное испытывают люди.
I imagine a similar experience is shared by those who find out they have a fatal disease that cannot be cured.
И когда ты понимаешь, что твоя жизнь вот прямо сейчас притравили.
When the explosions were happening and blew all the windows out of my house, you realize how fragile your life really is. And you start to evaluate life differently
И чувствовать жизнь начинаешь совсем по-другому.
and feel life differently and value life differently.
Это всё что-то такое.
For me, this was an incredible experience, honestly, and it was very important.
Очень важное на самом деле.
One of the days we were taken to a private clinic, which surprised us with sophistication of how everything was organized, the equipment they have, the separate building that they have. It was clearly a high-end operation. And there we met a doctor who was also born in Russia proper and then lived in Germany for a long time and became a surgeon in Germany. But before the war started, actually, he came to Ukraine and started to live there. And during the war, he started to apply his knowledge and his specialty in surgery to save limbs and save lives. There was one story that was particularly striking. There was a young woman who graduated from a Canadian university, and she was so proud of her accomplishment during the war that she came back to her town in the east of the country to show her parents her university diploma. And as they went into a shopping mall, basically to a food court to have a meal and celebrate her graduation, a Russian missile hit that shopping mall. And she was badly wounded. She was told that she will lose her legs. And somehow they found Dr. Lifshitz, and he took her in and applied his knowledge and the technology that he uses to disinfect the wounds, and slowly but surely he was able to save her legs. And in fact, there was a Ukrainian TV news story filmed about it. It's an amazing, amazing story. He cannot take too many people because he's only one doctor, and he only has one machine that helps him to do what he does. In fact, that machine is being made in Minnesota, and we would love to buy this equipment and send it to him so he will have another machine and double his great work that he does.
To cure one patient, it costs about 1 million hryvnia. And that's just medical costs, not even including payment for the medical staff. For 2 months, none of the staff got paid. Thankfully, we have been able to help all of our patients recover. We had a meeting with a few professors and medical experts, and even invited the mayor. And we came to the conclusion that we need to buy new technology and new equipment. But that technology needs to be sent to places where people will understand how to use it. It's not as simple as changing a bandage. We need new technology for treating wounds, specific antibiotics, artificial skin to close the wounds, and so forth. Even an ultrasound machine that's made in Minnesota. So I brought some parts of this technology here, but nobody accepted it. When the first war started in 2014, I went to speak with Ulana Suprun, and when I met with her, do you know what she asked me? She said, "What is your agenda?" I didn't have an agenda. I brought equipment with me and wanted to share my knowledge. I was able to treat a few patients in a private clinic, but then I got frustrated and gave up. Now I am trying again. My daughter and I went to Germany to the factory, and there we met a sympathetic colleague who sold me the machine I needed. That machine typically costs $70,000, but he sold it for me for $5,000, so I brought it here. And then Olena and the volunteers here bought 3 tons of medical supplies made by Esculap, a very high-quality brand of medical instruments. Just one of these instruments can cost up to 1,000 euros. One main issue is the poor hygienic status of the government medical clinics and hospitals. Additionally, they are not disinfected properly, and for wounds, this is dangerous because infected wounds cause 90% of deaths. I went to the head of the city, told them I brought equipment with me, and expressed the need to build a medical center. The center should include wound cleaning technology, bacteriology, and skin replacement. The new type of weapons penetrate skin layers more deeply, and the old treatment methods for skin recovery are no longer sufficient. This is why we need new treatment methods.
Olena introduced us to different people every day, and one day we were driven to a town of Makariv by 2 Ukrainian filmmakers. These guys go into the previously occupied towns and villages in the Kiev region and they help the people who lost their homes during the occupation. And it turns out that hundreds and hundreds of private homes and many large buildings were destroyed completely by the artillery fire and rockets and tanks and everything else. And they have no place to live. So many of them stay with their neighbors, or they live in barns with their animals. And it is becoming a very difficult situation for hundreds and hundreds of people. So their solution is to purchase single-family units that are like modular homes. They manufacture them in Kyiv region, actually, and they bring them over and install them on a plot of land where they connect it to the electricity and they connect it to the water main, and people can live there. These units come with furniture, with air conditioning and running water toilets and all kinds of, shower, cabin and all that good stuff. And family of 4 can stay there. They're fully prepared, and people actually live there while their buildings are being restored or rebuilt. And this is one of the projects we would like to take on as well. Each one of these buildings costs, let's say, $15,000. Larger ones cost a little bit more, but nevertheless, they can be used multiple times. As the family receives or gets their house rebuilt, then this particular unit can be given to other families and so on.
One of the people that we've met, it was very interesting. We were driven to the synagogue in central of Kyiv. And as we were driving up, I saw a line of people lined up outside the synagogue. And I said, "What is this?" And we didn't know. Nobody knew exactly. Olena was driving us. So we came into the synagogue, and as we walk in, there were a number of women going through boxes of stuff that was shipped from the United States and Canada, donations. And it had like shampoos and soap and children's clothing and adults' clothing. The woman in charge of it, her name is Mlada. She immigrated, she's our age. She lived and she went to school in Kyiv, and then she immigrated to Israel. And during the war, she came back. And she is working as an administrator in the synagogue. And she is in charge of going through the donations, separating everything. She said that by the time the donations get to them, because of the logistics and shipping and this and that a lot of it is actually expired and cannot be used. So they have to actually manually go through every item and put it in the right piles. And then she took us down to the area where they have everything already separated. And that's when she gave us an answer for the line of people. These are people that had to get up and leave everything behind, completely destroyed homes, nothing left, the children without any clothing. And the only way they get some clothing and shampoos and soaps and sanitary napkins and medication is to line up, and they let a few people at a time, and they go through the boxes, and the boxes are all sorted in between, like the clothing from 0 to 2 years old little girl. It was extremely emotional to see all that, and to know that the synagogue and this little woman is in charge of this whole thing, and so much is in her hands. And all these people lined up are relying on her, giving them some life, something to live in. It was very interesting to see, and emotional.
When we left the Soviet Union in 1977, we were part of what I call modern exodus. There were about 2 million Jews who lived in the USSR at the time. And then during the next 50 years, almost all of them got up and left. There were hardly any Jews left living in the former USSR countries. And when we left, we knew we were leaving for good. We were not coming back. We will never see our relatives. We were treated as traitors of the motherland. And it was a big move for all of us. It was very traumatic for many people. And exodus is not an easy thing, I have to tell you. When the war started and we turned to our friends and family for help, we started to hear people say things like, why should I help them? I left that country back when I did, not to come back and not to give them any money or any help. They kicked me out, and they were anti-Semites, and they will always be anti-Semites, and I don't want to have anything to do with that. And we knew Ukraine a lot better than that, because we've been to Ukraine so many times since we left the country. And we know people, we talked to them about it, but we couldn't help but address this issue very, very seriously. And so we made a special effort to meet with Ukrainian Jews who still live in Ukraine right now and ask them one simple question. What is it like to be a Jew living in Ukraine right now, especially during the war? Do you feel any anti-Semitism? Do you feel as a foreign entity, as we did back when we lived in the USSR? And in order to do that, we have asked Elena to organize meetings for us in Kyiv and in other places with the local Jews, members of the Jewish community. And she promised us a meeting with the chief rabbi of Ukraine. She also organized a few other meetings for us. We wanted to see different types of people, religious people, secular people, and so on and so forth. So the question of Jewish Ukraine became one of the centerpieces of our trip. And we talked to a number of people who at first actually were surprised that we were even asking this question. To them, the fact that they were Jewish meant absolutely nothing. They were Ukrainian first, rather than being Jewish Ukrainian. Yes, they were Jewish, some of them are religious, and they went to the synagogue and practiced their religion, but that meant nothing. They saw absolutely no conflict where our friends and relatives believe that there is one. And in order for us to explain this, we had to actually struggle to explain to the, especially young people in Ukraine, that there was such an issue. And it was one of the reasons why we left the USSR. And people were saying, look, it's been almost 50 years since you left. 2 generations of people were born and grew up since then. And it is absolutely incorrect and invalid to compare your experience to ours.
And all I ask is give them a chance. Give them a chance. Go take a look, or at least believe us, because we've been there. We have lived. We are Jewish. We have experienced anti-Semitism when we went to school. And we were able to see through all this and feel a completely new Ukraine.
As we visited the synagogue in Kyiv, we were going to meet the chief rabbi of Ukraine. Unfortunately, he was out of town, and someone else had to step in. And I'm kind of glad that that was the situation, because the person who stepped up to the plate was a military chaplain. And his name is David, and his call sign, his military call sign is Rebbe, which is the Russian version of, or Ukrainian version of rabbi.
A chaplain performs many combined functions. He is a psychologist. He is a person who can be told things that you won't tell anyone else. He is someone who can be asked for help, or someone to whom you complain about life. I'm not just any chaplain. I work at the General Staff Office. My direct command is a colonel who is reporting to General Zaluzhny himself. The difference is that a regular psychologist in a military unit must tell his commanding officer about soldiers' complaints. I don't have to tell anyone, and people know that. But we're not just talking and listening. We're actually helping the wounded. We deliver food and water, help to arrange surgeries, and evacuate people to other countries for medical help. One of the most difficult responsibilities is to look for people killed in action. I hate doing this, but if I don't do it, who else will? One time we were looking for a soldier for 4 months. We were able to identify the body based on the tattoos described by his wife. We found him, and we buried him. For the Jews, it is critical that a human body must be buried in the ground. Look, before World War II, it was usual for the people of all religions to turn to the rabbi in the village where they lived. This was especially common in Western Ukraine. If their own priest could not answer a question, then the last resort had always been a Jewish rabbi. For example, in the city of Chernovtsi, every Friday was designated as the Talk to the Rabbi Day for all local people. I've been working with many Christian and Muslim soldiers who have had problems. What are they supposed to do if there's no one else to talk to? What if a soldier receives a letter from his wife, who's living abroad, saying it's time for us to part ways? The man could be suicidal, and he is heavily armed. I spend most of my time at the front, but I'm still teaching Torah classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My students really need me, and I try very hard not to miss these classes and be here for them. There are about 60 professional chaplains of different confessions, and we are a very new branch of the armed forces. We are in constant contact with each other. The thing is that there are many volunteer chaplains. Any priest can call himself a chaplain and join a military unit. The need for such people is tremendous. You know, there are no atheists in the trenches, especially if there's an artillery shell exploding nearby. I know about 70 Israeli people who are fighting for Ukraine right now. Some of them were born in Ukraine, but just because they moved to Israel, they still have their friends here, their relatives, their first love even. You can't immediately separate from these things, so they want to help.
We also asked him that difficult question of anti-Semitism, and one of the questions we asked him is, so what do you think that when we come to Jews in America, and a lot of them are Ukrainian Jews, and we tell them we're helping Ukraine, and they say, why should we help that anti-Semitic country? It's all anti-Semites, and the Jews cannot live there. And we asked him that question, and he actually was taken aback. He couldn't even understand. He said, why? Why? Why would they even say stuff like that?
Yes, there were pogroms during the Tsar's rule and Jewish discrimination, but it was always driven by the higher-ups. I have lived almost my entire life in Ukraine. Other than certain circumcised parts of my body, I was not any different from other people. My grandma was very religious, and I don't know how, managed to get me circumcised on the 8th day after my birth. That's why I didn't go to the kindergarten until I was fully toilet trained and could do everything by myself. My father was a member of the Communist Party, so it was not welcome news that his son had something done to his member. However, we never had any problems. When we moved to Kiev, I never experienced any anti-Semitism. Yes, there were few expressions about the Jews that I could hear every now and then. Yes, one could take offense at that if he really wanted to. However, keep in mind, we are all very close neighbors here. Every now and then there could be unpleasant things happening between the neighbors. But I was never subjected to real expression of hatred of any kind. I was never hiding the fact that I was Jewish. About 30 years ago, I became a religious man and started to wear a yarmulke. Sometimes people would say, why don't you wear a hat on top of the skull cap so that you don't provoke anyone? I just couldn't care less. In 30 years or so, I've had no problems whatsoever. In fact, people approach me on the streets of Lviv and ask, are you a real Jew? Really? You guys came here and showed us that you care. This is the highest level of mitzvah. We don't have a choice. If we don't defend this country, it will disappear. Golda Meir once said, if the Arabs will stop fighting, then there will be peace. If the Jews will stop fighting, then there will be no Israel. We have a similar situation here in Ukraine. And in some ways, unfortunately, Ukraine is following in the footsteps of Israel.
When we went to the villages and we met all the people in the villages and to hear their stories, it's nonstop. Nonstop, you hear all these stories and you cry with them and you laugh with them. We met these women that were telling us how they had to evacuate 2 hours before the bombs fell on their buildings and completely destroyed the whole village. We saw the children that were affected by the war because they definitely have trauma problems right now. They're all traumatized. We met incredible people. We met this woman, her name is Marina. She has three little girls, and a mother, and her house was completely destroyed. It was outside of a town called Makarev. And what she was specializing in with her husband, it's very popular, it was very popular to grow domestic businesses. So they were growing their own goats and making goat cheese and goat milk and feta cheese and all this stuff. And when the war started, the husband went to the front line, and she was left with her mother and the three daughters. She is a speech therapist on top of everything. And they had to evacuate. And she was telling me the story how she didn't want to evacuate because what would she do with the 15 or 20 goats that she has?
They told us about everything, where the bomb fell, and showed us the actual hole in the ground and where the Russians were and where they did this and that. They could not believe that somebody from America, the Hollywood, would come and pay a visit and listen to their stories. To them, it was one of the main things, and we were glad to be part of it. Elena said that Kyiv is a beautiful city, and it truly is. And we went, as we arrived on the next morning, we went for a walk. And in one of the squares in Kyiv, Mikhailovskaya Square, they brought in the Russian tanks, the burnt out Russian tanks and artillery pieces, and just parked them there. And so it became sort of a monument to what was going on in this war while the war is going on. So we had to go there because the backdrop for these tanks is the most beautiful blue and gold cathedral, which is the most amazing piece of architecture you've ever seen. So as we're standing there, and I'm being videotaped, and I'm giving a quick description of what's going on here, setting the scene, people start hearing English being spoken. So they start stopping and talking to us, and we started meeting more and more people, and it was a very impromptu meeting place. We didn't plan it at all. There was one young man who had a toy stuffed leopard, and he was setting the leopard on one of the tanks and taking selfies with it. And we were wondering what was going on here, and he told us with very heavy British accent that his name is Alex. He's part of this organization called North Atlantic Fellows Organization, or NAFO. They are specializing in doing high-tech warfare, basically, against the people who spread false news on the internet and things of that sort. They're hackers who fight other hackers, basically. As we were talking to him about what he does for NAFO, another gentleman stopped. He's an older man. He's 76 years old, and started asking us questions. What are you doing here? Why are you here? Where are you from? He turns out to be a Californian attorney who could not sit back and just look at the news and see all these atrocities taking place. So this man creates a nonprofit organization, drops everything he has in California, and moves to Poland and sets up a supply acquisition and delivery company that basically buys things that are needed by the Ukrainian military or the civilians and delivers that stuff across the border to Ukraine. So basically he said, I'm just driving this thing. I have applied, I've asked the Ukrainian military if I could do some work for them, and they never answered, so I decided I'm not going to wait. I will actually just do something. And so he found his own calling in this thing. So now he splits his time between Poland and Ukraine.
When we were planning our trip, all of a sudden we get a phone call from a friend of our family member. And he is a young man, 29-year-old. His name is Ran Zapardino, has no relationship to Ukraine whatsoever. He's actually from Italian background. And he said that I really want to participate. I want to be a part of this effort. I want to do something. Can I come with you? And we thought, yeah, we'll see. He actually bought a ticket and he actually came with us. And this young man has no connection to Ukraine whatsoever. And he only has this big heart, and he wanted to be a part of Ukraine, a fight against unfairness. And he came with us, and for a week we've been together. We were traveling everywhere. He was actually filming everything and taking pictures. And then he was asked, because he's a high-tech specialist, he was asked to go to the east part of Ukraine, to Kharkiv, and do some work there. So he left us, and we were left the two of us. But for a week, Ron was part of us. So here's another, a non-Ukrainian who wanted to be a part of the world, not to be indifferent in this unfairness.
Generations of Americans, people around the world, have worked so hard to create a world where this kind of thing doesn't really happen anymore. And they've done that by responding to aggression where it comes, nipping it in the bud, destroying it before it grows. You can't let these kinds of things fester. You know, we don't choose what happens in our lifetimes. We don't choose what our generation's struggles are going to be. We don't choose what our history is going to be in some ways. But we do get to choose is how we respond to it. So I may not know anyone in Ukraine, and I may not have any Ukrainian blood, but when we see tanks running across a border, invading a peaceful country for no reason other than aggression, we have to respond. And I don't see how I could see that and not respond. Being with the locals and being with the volunteers there, you get to see this incredible, dogged determination and spirit. I've never seen a more optimistic people. And these people are at a war fighting for their lives. And the pervasive feeling is optimism and hope for the future. It's really incredible to see. And these are people that you can help. These are people that you give them the ability to stand up on their own 2 feet, and they will run and they will stride with it. And I think that's part of also what makes this different from other times in my lifetime where Americans have tried to help.
Another interesting meeting was set up by Elena. We were waiting for our appointment at the synagogue, and two young guys come to meet with us. And one of them is a Ukrainian, his name is Dmitry, and the other one is named Suleiman. Now, we've been to Ukraine very, very many times. We have not met a single Suleiman before. So it was kind of a surprise. And we started talking. He speaks some English, but then he started speaking Ukrainian to us. And it was another surprise. Very interesting story. He was born in Syria. He's Christian and was studying in a Ukrainian university, preparing for hospitality, a career in hospitality. When the war started, he immigrated, or he left for Germany, but he couldn't stay there for long. He decided to go back and live in Ukraine and help the Ukrainians. And he became part of this volunteer organization that works with Elena, and they're doing all kinds of other things. And he helps them to collect money in the West and purchase the supplies in Germany and in other countries and bring it into the Ukrainian villages. And we came across him a number of times later when we actually went to the villages to deliver humanitarian aid. There he was carrying boxes with food and medication and speaking Ukrainian to the old grandmas. It was very, very touching. I remember very, very vividly the stories that were told to us about a man named Stepan who lived in a village that was occupied by the Russians. And then everybody left, but he stayed back because there were about 15 dogs in the neighborhood that were not taken by the people. And he said, I just could not leave them alone. So he took these dogs with him into a hole in the ground, basically. And he later on showed us that hole where he was hiding with the dogs. And he lived there, and he fed them the same potatoes that he was eating, and they all survived. And some of them were injured, and he took care of them, and they were waiting for the Russians to leave. And in fact, they were kicked out, and the help arrived, and all dogs survived. So these are the stories that stayed with us for the longest time.
There was another family, was a woman whose both of her sons are at the front line. And these women, with all that grief, they lost everything, no houses left, nothing. And their sons at the front line, they were meeting us in the village with vareniki, with the Ukrainian dumplings, full bowls of food, and whatever we did not eat, and they were forcing it, force-feeding us. And whatever we did not eat, they put them in the plastic bags, and they said, take them and give them out to people.
I remember clearly how impressed I was with the volunteers, because it seemed to me that these guys don't ask these questions that they cannot control, really. They are asking themselves only one question: how can I be of help? And then they do what they can, and they do it well. And that's all. They don't worry about the government, they don't worry about vacations, they don't worry about anything outside of their control. Their goal is to help other people. And this has helped me personally a great deal. This is why we're doing this film. This is why we're doing all the other things.
My feeling is that the people of Ukraine, the way they are right now, the way I saw them, these are the real heroes. These are the real heroes. They don't live. We grew up watching movies and reading books and, you know, on World War II, but this was, you know, in the movies. This is real. These are people that are living this life right now. This is real. And they are heroes. They're real heroes. This is not made up story, and this is 21st century. This is something that we could never, and they could never expect. We could never imagine something like this to happen in this world, in the sophisticated world. One major message coming at us from these people is thank you for not abandoning us, thank you for not forgetting us. And we're so thankful to the Western world, to America, to United States of America for your support, that you are not leaving us alone. We lived through this life for 3 weeks, almost 2 weeks in Kiev and a week in Lviv, and we have a chance to leave. We left. We didn't have to stay there. We came back, we're dealing with our own things. We sleep through the night, and we don't have those feelings and emotions that we were living through for those 2 weeks. But the people stayed behind, and they have no choice. They have to live it. They have to get up in the morning and go to work and go to school and put their children in a bathtub. How do you explain it to your kids? What do you, so this is what I feel, and I have to deal with these feelings. I have to overcome them somehow.
Being able to return, we feel that we cannot sit still. We have to do something. We can't just enjoy life and take vacations and do things like that, like we used to. We have to help them. They're sitting there waiting for us. They think we're demigods, that we can do everything. We can do everything. We can give them Patriots, we can give them Leopard tanks, we can give them long-range rockets. We can do anything, right? All we have to do is just snap our fingers and the stuff starts coming. But we can't. We can't. We're just regular people. All we can do is ask everyone else to work with us, to help us, to organize.
And to not be indifferent, to to feel the compassion for these people that are just like us. We all live this life here. It's comfortable, right? We don't have to worry about anything. Imagine that the people of Ukraine lived the same life. They had plants, they had businesses, they were getting married, they were planning vacations, they were having children, and then one night on the 24th of February, everything fell crashing down. Everything. They have nothing left. They're trying to survive and hope for the future.
Before the trip, we knew heroes only from the books and movies and songs. And now we know heroes personally. We've met them, we've talked to them, and they thanked us for coming, and they are asking for our help. During the first year of the war, Elena and I were able to collect quite a bit of money and send it to the Ukrainian volunteers. We are very thankful to our donors, friends, and family who trusted us, gave us the money. We transferred all of that money to the people whom we trust as well, and we can vouch for every penny that was spent. It went to the right place. Since then, we decided to go even further. We have applied for the nonprofit status with the IRS. We formed a corporation that can take the money, donations, and they become deductible, tax deductible for the donors. And so the easiest, probably the easiest way to help for anybody in the world is to donate money to a small organization like ours. We will make sure that 100% of your donation will end up with the children, with the animals, with the soldiers that need help. All you need to do is tell us, where would you like to spend your money?
Any dollar amount will make a difference. But even if you cannot, there are other ways to get involved. Spread the word. Be aware of what's going on in Ukraine. Talk to your friends and relatives. Talk to people at work. Tell them what we are doing. If you want to organize a presentation, organize an evening, we will be happy to come and tell people our stories. We will tell them what we went through, and hopefully we'll find some people that are compassionate and will want to be involved and will want to help. So these are the things we can do.
We can do it in person, or we can do it online. We have done many presentations via Zoom or any other means where we answer people's questions, we explain what's going on. We know a lot. We have too much information in our heads. We want to share it with you. And also, one of the things that may seem trivial, but you need to educate yourself. You need to know what's going on. You need to know why this war should not have been fought and why it is out there, and how the Ukrainian people are trying to survive and fight back. The easiest way to help is to get in touch with us, because we have very many ways to do it. We know of many ways to do it. Our website is ukrainenow.com, and you will see the name in the description of this film and in other places on the screen. But think about your own special talents. If you're a filmmaker, you could create a documentary like this one, for example, and which will go a long way to help the people of Ukraine. If you're an IT professional, you can help the volunteers to organize their work by automating their processes, by creating websites for them. They need your help. If you're a medical doctor, medical professional, you can help. If you're a military person, you can help a lot. There are many ways to do it, but please get in touch with us. We do not buy bombs, we do not buy tanks or bullets. What we can do is channel your help toward a specific cause. On our website, you can choose where you want your money to be spent. It could be animal help, it could be medical assistance, it could be anything you like. Just please let us know.
Every one of those projects that you want to participate in or you want to donate money on will be fully documented. We have full accounting for every penny that's been donated and how it was spent. And all of it is going to be spent on humanitarian aid, basically, because all of that is for the people, not necessarily for a military. And every one of them is going to be accounted for, and we will try to keep updated information on how the money was spent on our website.
I know we live on a big planet, but we are in the same boat. Really, it's not us and them, it's us together. We can have the same problem happening to us at any time. So let's be honest with ourselves. We cannot let terrible things happen on the planet. And when they do happen, we need to help each other.
The war is still going on, it's still happening. People are dying as we speak. And we will be involved in this. And we're in this for a long time, for a long run. Because once Ukraine wins, and Ukraine will win, there will be a victory, Ukrainian victory. But Ukraine will still need a lot of help. We will still need to be participating in rebuilding and helping people, and there will be a lot of trauma in the mental situation with the children, with the veterans coming back. There's a lot of stuff that we will be involved in, and all we ask is for all of you to not give up. Not give up. There will be victory. Ukraine will win. We will win. All of us together, we will persevere. There's going to be a victory. Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава!